Red Cloud Financial Services is your preeminent source for mining industry opportunities. The team provides a unique tailored marketing program dedicated to reaching the right people from its mining-focused global network, giving clients access to industry-leading events and conferences, retail and institutional marketing, plus an in-house growth-driven digital agency. Red Cloud Financial Services has access to some of the mining industry's most notable companies and CEOs. For more information, visit redcloudfs.com.
Good morning. Welcome to Digging Deeper. Today we've got a great guest. I want to thank Red Cloud. We're catching up with the CEO and director of Luminix Resources, Marshall Koval. And this past year to date, so from January forward, there's been quite a bit of news, lots of great results, as well as lots of big milestones to hit with the projects that you have. Lots to get to. How are you doing today? Let's get right at it. How are you, Marshall?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having us today. It's be real good to talk to your viewers about where we're headed since we spoke last year.
Well, maybe let's take a step back and just give kind of the overall of where, like, what you're doing in Ecuador, and kind of lay out the framework so we can talk about the latest news release and go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
So walk us through, how long you've been in Ecuador, what was the kind of gist for getting there, and what's led up to this year being kind of a big move forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we entered Ecuador in 2014. At the time, we saw that the jurisdiction was emerging from sort of fiscal and regulatory regime that was pretty punitive to one that was more favorable to foreign investment, particularly in mining. So we came in, we were one of the early entries into the country, and we had acquired initially what is in Lumina Gold today, our sister company, the Cangrejos project. And then after that, the concession system was opened, the investment climate improved, and then we acquired several other assets, the Condor project. And then when the concession system opened and they had the auction, we acquired Tarqui, Kimi, Cascas, the other half of Cangrejos deposit, and all that was in Lumina Gold. Then we decided Lumina Gold was on the development pathway. We spun all of our other assets into Luminex. We were at the time the second largest landholder in Ecuador, concession holder. So today what we have is a mix of copper and gold, primarily gold assets in Luminex. And our flagship project is the Condor project. But we also have Anglo-American and a JV drilling at our Pegasus project as we speak. And then we have a JV also with Jogmec at our Arcadius project. And we're managing Arcadius for Jogmec, and Anglo is managing Pegasus.
Now, I was mentioning to you before, too, I came across an interesting consulting group called BN Americas, and they were saying that the Ecuadorian government is really interested in stimulating the local mining industry, and they're hoping to eventually have it surpass oil as their main export. So that's big news for someone saying, "Hey, listen, should I bet on Ecuador?" That's definitely some optimistic news, even if this year is a bit challenging because of interest rates and whatnot.
Yeah, what's interesting along those lines, just yesterday there was an article that came out that the four primary exports in Ecuador right now are number one, petroleum, number two, shrimp farming, and it was number three, bananas exports, and then mining was number four. But mining in March just surpassed bananas to move into the third place. So it is continuing to be a more important portion of the economy, particularly in the exports. And projects like Mirador, Fruta del Norte, and the whole host of other mines that are in the development pipeline here and in the permitting process will continue to add to that. So it's got a shot at catching up with petroleum and potentially surpassing it.
And what's interesting about these projects that are underway, as well as these kind of in line, is they're big projects. Like, these are big, substantial projects. They're not, profitable, smaller, artisanal types of things. These are big projects.
Yeah, there's three really good. You just had up on the screen a second ago, three underground projects, Loma Larga, Curipamba, and La Plata, that are in the permitting process right now. And these are high-grade underground mines. And then we just put out yesterday a pre-feasibility study on our Cangrejos project, which is a 17 million ounce gold deposit. We have 11.5 million ounces in reserves with that PFS. So I'd have people take a look at Lumina Gold. So that's still a couple of years out before we get through the feasibility and permitting process, but it's another big project in the wings. And then we have our Condor project that we'll talk about more today.
Yes, and I just, as kind of a throw in, the way that gold's been responding the past year, I think that most people would anticipate gold being strong moving forward as well. So you're in great metals with gold and copper. I mean, they're both, one's key to the electric future, and one is giving us a stability in a bit of a chaotic time.
Yeah, I think we're really happy with that mix. And the thing with Luminex, our flagship company or project, as I mentioned earlier, is the Condor project. And Condor has two components to it. The northern area, we call it the northern epithermal area, has about 3 million ounces of gold in it, and it's primarily gold. But in the south, we have a deposit, Santa Barbara, that's got about 3.5 million ounces of gold and about 400 million pounds of copper, and it's a gold copper porphyry. But we put out a PEA in 2021 on the northern epithermal area, and we're continuing to work there. And we made a major discovery since we spoke last in this Cuyes West zone. So we're really focused, a lot of efforts there. We have 2 drill rigs in the field right now, advancing that drilling. And so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, this new breccia, this extends things quite significantly.
Yeah, so if you'll recall in the 2021 PEA that we put out, we had 2,500 tons per day from the underground camp zone in the mine plan in the PEA, and then 22,500 tons per day from open pit at Cuyes, and that's a breccia zone. But what's really happened is, that project, we had 387 million NPV at $1,600 gold with about 187,000 ounces produced a year over 12 years. But the initial capital was about 600 million. So this Cuyes West discovery we've made is a high-grade discovery, and it's sort of 4 to 25 meters of high-grade mineralization, anywhere from 4 grams up to 30 grams. Quite a bit of these intercepts, not even talking about the breccia you mentioned, in this higher-grade Cuyes West system, have been 10, 11 grams over, 10 meter widths and that sort of thing. So what we're looking to do is more than duplicate the camp zone. And the camp zone had about 600,000 ounces of gold in the mine plan in the PEA. So instead of a great big $600 million initial capital build at 25,000 tons per day, what we're looking at is something on the order of maybe 4,000 or 5,000 tons per day with 2 underground targets, the camp zone and Cuyes West. So in Cuyes West, we've got about 26 drill holes into it now. We've released the results for 22 of them. I'd have you guys go ahead and look at our website for more information on that. But we're really excited about this. This is the highest grade mineralization we drilled in all of Ecuador for any of our projects. And we're hoping to get, 1.5 million ounces into, and here's some of the results you guys are putting up right now. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
5 meters of 30 grams, unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
So what we're hoping is to rescope a PEA. We've got another 10 or 12 holes to drill. And just to give you a comparison, at the camp zone for the 600,000 ounces that we have in the resource there, we drilled 39 holes. So we'll be up to about 39 holes here in Cuyes West. Once we finish that program in a couple of months, we'll look at the results, do an internal resource estimate, decide if we need to update the estimate, and then eventually move on to a PEA. So that's kind of the current plan in that Condor North area.
And you're saying this is an open pit, but also underground. And tell me if I'm wrong, you're about 350 meters down or so? Yeah.
More or less.
So that's also great as well, because I'm assuming it's open as well for further.
It's open at depth, and that's the interesting thing. So now I'll talk about the breccia.
Yeah.
In the last news release we put out, we put 3 holes across, trying for this higher grade Cuyas West structure, which we did hit, but we found an unknown breccia body. So we had 200 meters of width, and all of the assays out of those 3 holes were over 1 gram per ton. And the breccia body is not that deep. It's sort of 150 meters vertical from the topography. So we're going to continue to test that as well. So, I mean, it's really gold-rich environment, pretty much. And we're starting to understand the structural geology and the control of the mineralization a lot better. And then one more area we're drilling now is about 3 kilometers away. It's called Prometedor. And we've got about 6 holes into that. We haven't got our assays back yet. But it also has sort of open pit potential, but also underground potential, the same type of mineralization as the Camp Zone and Cuyas West.
And it goes without saying, I mean, this has been a challenging year for everyone in every sector in all the markets, but you guys managed to still raise 12.5 million, and it was kind of led by Ross Beatty. That's significant, to say the least, to be able to raise that kind of capital, and it really shines a light as to what the strength of what's happening down there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of upside. We haven't seen the share price move up the way we'd like to see yet, based on all these great results, and hopefully that'll come as more investors move down into the junior explorer developer space. But yeah, to be able to raise $12.5 million in this market was quite a chore. It was one of the hardest raises that we've done, but we got there, and that kind of gives us runway for a whole year budget to be able to carry out the exploration program. So we're also going to start some metallurgy work on the Cuyas West area as well. So we're funded well right now. We've got a real clear program that we're executing, and we're continuing to get really good results. And, you know, this is a company with about a $40 million market cap and trading about 31 cents a share. And there's a lot of leverage and upside. I mean, there's over 6 million ounces of gold and 400 million pounds of copper in the resource already. So any way you look at it, on a PNAV ratio or ounces in the ground, we're way undervalued. So we believe it's a real good investment thesis going forward.
And with that 12.5, is that, I mean, roundabout, is it a lot focused on Condor?
Yeah, so we've got a 9,000 meter drilling program at Cuyas West, and then another 1,500 meters over at the Prometedor target. So that's where most of the money in the ground is headed, and some of the metallurgy work as well.
And not to be forgotten too is the kind of JVs that you've done. So you've got Pegasus, and is it Arquidas or
Orchidius, yeah,
Arquidas, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe give us a little bit of an update as to how that's coming along, because I believe they're working right now. They're drilling right now.
Yeah, so Anglo American is drilling at our Pegasus project. They've identified 8 porphyry copper targets. This is one of our largest land packages. They're working in Pegasus A, and there's 37,000 hectares of land, but within that they've identified 8 porphyry targets, and they're after copper primarily, right? So the first target that they're drilling is Medusa, and they have a 3,200 meter drilling program. They're in the field drilling now. To date, they've spent about 17 million out of a 57 million earn-in to get to 60%, and then they can earn another 10% if they carry us to a production decision. So that would take them to 70%. But the potential there is amazing. There has been a few holes in the past drilled in the area of Medusa, so we know there's a porphyry there. So they're looking to drill 600-700 meters in these holes, and hopefully we'll see some assays in the next few months here from them. The other deal we had, you mentioned, was Orchidius, and we're the operator there, and that's Jogmec. Last year, we drilled 2,500 meters, and they're coming back to the field now, and we're doing planning for another 1,500 meters, you know, in the near term here. So those are both good. That's a $7 million earn-in for 70%. But the good thing about those is it's non-dilutive discovery potential. You know, if we hit on Medusa or any of the targets that Anglo has developed, then it's a whole different story. Then you're into a major copper story, as well as the Condor gold story that we have.
This could be a huge lift for not only for the company but for Ecuador itself. People often are like, well, what's the time frame for this? But when you keep on hitting like new extensions and new stuff,
Right.
you don't want to tie that off too soon. So you can drill all year round, except for what is it, 3 months in the rainy season or so?
Actually, we've continued to drill through the rainy season, and the
cool.
rainy season this year has been really heavy, and we've managed to be able to stay out there. And it's also steep terrain at Condor. So, so if you look forward, I think what we'll get through is the rest of this year with the drilling program we have, the assay and the metallurgy program. And then we'll step back and look if we scope a new PEA next year on the Condor North area. And we're continuing to do sampling and every time there's a road cut within the project, we're out there sampling. We found new mineralization. So we're doing a lot of field geology as well as the drilling program. So, I think next year we'll be in the position where we'll understand if we move down the development pathway with Condor like we did with the Cangrejos project. And but right now we're hitting a lot of gold, so we're going to keep drilling.
So without a doubt, I mean the assays and numbers, they're great, and you get the company for quite a bargain right now. Now, the one, I guess, issue that people say that comes up is that there's the political issue that's there. But how do you find that things are kind of shifting? And we alluded to it a little bit earlier, but with the other projects and big players in, they're probably building a lot of goodwill and confidence in projects. What do you think moving forward? Is that improving? Is it coming along?
Well, as far as the progressive governments, if you go back to when we started in 2014 with Correa and then Moreno government and the Lasso government, all of those governments since 2014 have been supportive to the mining sector. And you've had a progressive improvement in the regulatory regime and the fiscal regime. And Ecuador's become quite competitive with Chile and Peru and local neighbors, similar geology. And it hasn't been systematically explored like Peru and Chile. So the discovery potential is huge. I mean, you have things like Solaris's Warintza project, SolGold discoveries. And, listen, when we went into the country with Cangrejos, there was no resource estimate. And now we're up over 17 million ounces of gold, since 2014. So there's the potential for more discovery. There's obviously been some issues with some of the indigenous groups have tried to slow down mining or want more control over mining within their areas, their patrimony areas, and that sort of thing. And currently there's political issues. They're in the process of trying to impeach the president, and so that'll either go a couple ways. Either the impeachment will happen. If that happens, the vice president would step in, so the policies would continue, or he could invoke. He could basically dissolve Congress and then call for new elections and run the country. But I think even if the Correistas, who are probably the most powerful political group, come back in, they're the same guys that started this whole mining revolution in Ecuador. So I think there's some turbulence there, but I think it'll continue to move forward. And what we're seeing now is a lot of these projects starting to get into that permitting cycle. It's been a little bit slower than we like, but things are moving forward. So, I think we view Ecuador in the longer term as it'll work its issues out and continue to be a strong place to invest in mining.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for spending some time here. And we certainly, I would imagine, even with like the IMF and World Bank, with the desperate need for copper, moving forward a couple of years down the road for all this electric future, that I would imagine they would be encouraging Ecuador as well to say, hey, listen, let's open up some projects here. Let's keep it going, because the need for gold is always there, but certainly copper. And so it's to see the results you're getting. It is very exciting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to continuing to invest and advance our projects. And, these things all go through cycles. And, when we look at where we've been in Lumina Gold, the mix of gold and copper has served us really well. And so we really like that that mix of those two commodities. And that's one of the strengths of Ecuador. It's a lot of copper potential. Pretty much every major copper player in the world is there in some degree. And, I think the future should work out well. And, anywhere in the world nowadays seems like politics are a bit crazy, but that's just the way it is.
Yes. Yeah. That, and certainly people I think are more comfortable with that today because it is up in the air. But you guys have got a huge pathway with lots of cash, and you're going to have an exciting year moving forward. Is there anything kind of in this short term for someone to say, hey, if I want to kind of keep score, or some things that you're watching for?
Yeah, so keep an eye on the Cuyas West drilling results, and hopefully later in the year we'll see some of the Pegasus drilling results out of Anglo. But we've drilled 27 holes so far. We've released at Cuyas West 22. We've got another 10 or 12 holes planned, so you'll see continuous news flow. Every 2 or 3 holes we'll be putting out some updates, and so that's going to be the near-term catalyst as far as the stock goes.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for giving us an update. Wish you all the best, and we'll look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate the time and the interest.
Of course. Take care.
Red Cloud Financial Services is your preeminent source for mining industry opportunities. The team provides a unique tailored marketing program dedicated to reaching the right people from its mining-focused global network, giving clients access to industry-leading events and conferences, retail and institutional marketing, plus an in-house growth-driven digital agency. Red Cloud Financial Services has access to some of the mining industry's most notable companies and CEOs. For more information, visit redcloudfs.com.
Welcome back. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. We had a great chat before. Mr. John Lee, who's the interim CEO and executive chairman over at FLYN Nickel. It goes without saying, nickel is so critical, and people are still slowly coming along. But certainly the crazy politics and what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and whatnot is only lending credibility towards Canada being a great source to look for nickel. We had a great chat a few months ago, so I'm really looking forward to see what's happening with FLYN Nickel and where you're at, and if you're as optimistic as I am about nickel moving forward here.
Well, Andrew, good to be back on your show.
Great to see you.
I was in your dressing room, digital dressing room, while you were discussing the previous story. I don't know the story well, but when I heard about the government and the protest and the dissolving of the Congress, I said, it's not for the lighthearted. And before we delve into nickel, we had the company FLYN Nickel's Minago project. I was on your show 6 months ago, and we started the milestone of reaching an agreement with the First Nations. And pleased to announce, just 6 weeks ago, we had signed with the Norway House Cree Nation the impact benefit agreement. So this is not an MOU. This is a binding agreement that governs throughout the life of the Minago mine from start to finish. So it's a discussion that was 2 years in the making, and before that, they also had a number of discussions with the prior operators. So we have extremely strong local support. The Norway House is one of the most forward-looking First Nations group in Canada. Is one of the top 10 largest in terms of population. I toured the area. It's a pristine place. It's almost a bit of like hidden treasure in the Lake Manitoba, and we'll be creating hundreds of high-paying jobs in the area. And this is a very mutually beneficial relationship that's forged, and it's going to deliver benefits for decades to come. And not only that, in terms of the Manitoba province, we have submitted our final amendment to the Environmental Act license, and that license was actually originally granted 10 years ago. So it's a minor alteration on the relocation of the tailings. It's not a problem because we have 197 square kilometers of land that are very gentle topography, and so it's just a kilometer further away from the watershed. So given that we've received the green light from the First Nations, we believe the Environmental License approval will be imminent. The technical aspects of the license have already been reviewed and approved. And so it's just making sure that our social aspect of it is being checked it's been blessed, which it has. So, and not only do we have the local community support, the provincial support, Andrew, as you might be aware, with other nickel companies that Redcom might have covered, or yourself, is several companies exploring in Canada, anywhere from BC to Sudbury to other places, had received government grants in the hundreds of thousands of dollars from the federal government. So not only do we have local support, provincial support, you have the government support, and we have United States calling Canada looking for nickel, and potentially we can also get grants from the United States. And then on top of all that, you have Elon Musk talking about building a battery plant in Ontario. And then upon hearing that, we've been approached by certain Korean battery manufacturers are also looking at building a nickel sulphide plant, which will take our feed, the concentrate feed of nickel sulphide, bypassing the refinery process and the smelting process, and directly process the concentrate from Minago's mill to producing the nickel sulphide, and then gonna go directly in, which is a precursor to the battery. Things are moving very, very rapidly. And we have more than we can chew right now, with probably close to 12 companies they're talking to us, and we're being on the short list of the government's list of companies to refer to. And we're just being bombarded with interest. Even though our share price it's gone up about 20% from when we talked, but we're still sub $20 million market cap. Still had a long ways to go from even just a year ago when we traded at $1.40 at 100 close to $100 million market cap. Right now we're trading at 18 cents.
No, it goes without saying, it's been a challenging year for everybody, and for you to be up over 20% is great. But this is still for nickel, for having that ESG component done, for we've have lots of guests and lots of companies we have on talking about whether it's Ford's deal with CATL. They're spending $3 billion or something in Michigan. I mean, all of these things are coming together, and people talk about lithium, or they talk about other metals and minerals. The nickel part still has to be answered, and so it's great that you've brought up a lot of these things, because we've talked about a bunch of these projects the Department of Defense for the U.S. is looking at. So it makes sense to me that you need to find Canadian projects that are big enough, that are going to be worth enough, that can directly feed not only just this one Ford one, but all of these other ones that are humming and hawing and whispering and that are all coming together.
Well, Andrew, you're right about North America. The world is increasingly becoming very, very divisive, and we're being told in no certain terms we cannot have any Asian content whatsoever. So there is definitely a premium that's placed not only on nickel sulphide versus laterite, but also nickel sulphide project coming out of North America. And you're right that the nickel issue has not been fully addressed. And what's interesting is that even though the auto and battery manufacturers are making forefront steps, even though there usually is a bit of old school and inertia to sort of, and they have a different supply chain issues they're addressing, and nickel is only one of the probably 30 or 50 that they're having issues. But they're already talking to us, even though we might not deliver until 2028 or 2030, and they're mapping out to 2035 for their nickel needs. What's interesting, though, I want to bring up with you, this sort of an insight, is that they're asking for nickel sulphide. We have 8 auto companies asking for nickel sulphide because their battery guys are asking for it. So they're helping other battery guys to help them procure nickel sulphide. But little do they know that there's not only nickel sulphide is not available, but the precursor, the feed for nickel sulphide, is even harder to come by. And then the Vales and Glencores, majority of the nickel mines in Canada and also the United States, they're in production today. They are all underground because all the open pits are gone. Yeah. So as you know, underground is not like, okay, nickel price double, I need to double my production, so let's dig a deep, bigger hole, right? It's not going to work like that. So I think they're moving as fast as they could, but I think they're still sort of the half awakening stage. They're like, okay, I need nickel sulphide, and then I can see where 6 months or 3 months down the road, and their management report is going to say, we look everywhere, there's no nickel sulphide available. I guess we need to build a nickel sulphide plant. And then when they reach that conclusion, they would logically move on to the next stage, which is where's the feed for that nickel sulphide? So even though we're early stage and nickel has gone through that correction, a bit of a round trip, Circus Act from 10 to 50, now it's at a very strong support, used to be a critical, who's a huge heavy resistance, decade-low resistance. But we're very, very optimistic about the future going forward because we see what's coming down on the pipeline. And on a conservative estimate based on the data that's being shared with us by the auto manufacturers, nickel supply need to double to feed their need. And this is like based on a 30 or 40% penetration. So I think what's going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of substitution event take place where your utensils are not going to be as shiny as once they were, and maybe get so rusty over time because just simply not nickel out there. And you know what? There's other anecdotal evidence already surfacing in that Trafigura, discovered a $750 million fraud where they're supposedly their LME nickel contracts turn out to be bags of sands. And the market's going to just get increasingly tighter and tighter. And you have the Sprott coming out with a nickel ETF.
Yes.
This is identical to what I see maybe 4 years ago in the lithium market. Even though the writing on the wall, unfortunately, the timing was not right for a couple of lithium juniors in Quebec that went belly up, and now it's just a matter of just a matter of biding our time, continue to de-risk the project. It sounds cliche, but that's exactly what we're doing. And I don't think it's going to take long. I mean, I believe that what we saw in March a year ago is only the precursor of what's to come.
It's really interesting too, because a lot of companies in the last 6 months to a year have announced MOUs with direct battery makers, car manufacturers, whatnot, is that this idea or this model of someone directly coming to a company saying, well, we don't need to deal with valet. We could go directly, we could invest in a mine itself, get our direct feed, and we don't have to then piecemeal things together. That may have sounded like ridiculous 10, 15, 20 years ago that someone would have thought, no, why would that happen? That's looking almost obvious now that that's the event that's coming together, is that they're understanding that each step of the way we need to have these resources, and also, especially in the West, that ESG component. And with some countries, it's a bit tougher to convince native groups to be excited or involved in a project. In Canada, and they get it, especially the EV side. They know how valuable it is, how important it is, what it can do for their community. And for you to get that far down the road to have this done with them, that's a huge feather in your cap.
Andrew, they're tracking your carbon when you take a flight from Taipei to Toronto. It's 995 kilos of carbon. And there's talk about capping per capita spend of carbon at 1 ton per year, which means if you take a trip from Toronto to Taipei, then you have to eat tofu for the rest of the year. Same for auto. Okay, if you buy an auto with nickel coming from Latin Indonesia, that's going to eat into your further carbon credits. You won't have much left to eat even. What you saw in some of the deals struck between the car and battery manufacturers and with the Canadian junior outfits. This is only the starting point, and they are, Andrew, to be honest, we talked to the same people. These are management reporting. They need to check the boxes because they have a very heavy pressure from their upper management. So what you see in terms of the spend by the majors investing in juniors right now in Canada, maybe to the tune of 20 to 50 million, is only a token of what's to come. Right now, they're just like, give me the biggest project, okay? I just need to fulfill my report. However, the real iron hit the road, or the rubber hit the road, is going to be the guys. These guys are not going to write $100 million, $200 million check unless there is a definitive visibility and roadmap towards production. So even though FLYN Nickel is a bit late to the game, people are scratching their heads saying, how can somebody invest in something much junior stage but not FLYN Nickel? I think the purpose and the purpose is different. It's a different purpose. One is just get a bit of get a management reporting, right? Just to address the shareholders of their upper chain prospective management. But when it comes to the shove, there's no way these guys are going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion, $2 billion, unless you have the ESG, you have the impact benefit agreement, you have a feasibility study, and you have the license to put the shovel on the ground. So from that point of view, Andrew, I'm pretty sure that, as you know, as well I do, that the number of junior companies in North America at that stage, or can reach that stage within the next 12 to 18 months, you probably can name it within a handful, maybe less than 5. And then from there, you say, somebody who's not in a Michigan, this iron state with the control by the Democrats, or that's not an underground mining project, has a lot of risk associated with it, and that's an open pit project that's above the current head grades of open pit mining project 0.4. You can probably name no more than 3. So I'm not as surprised as you are that we're still standing at where we are. But I do think that things are going to move a lot quickly once we get the feasibility study and get the final environmental act license. Both are anticipated by the end of the year, Andrew.
See, that's big. I was going to ask what's the time frame on that. That's really good, because you guys still are, for what you've done and for the importance of nickel. And also, it goes without saying, like the Canada factor with even though politics is nasty right now, it's political stability. And you have a lot of the ESG, and that I can't say enough. I mean, saying to you get it, but to viewers, that is going to be critical as we go each year down the road. It's, you see some of these other countries where people will say, you can't go there because they dump in the ocean. You can't go there because they do this. That's going to be a huge, factor.
Even Mexico, the pendulum is swinging the other way, right? And even the United States, I don't think that Biden has approved a greenfield mining project in the last 2 years. So even in the case of Nevada, I think they're going through a crossroad of this delicate paradox of balancing climate change versus, and nobody's at home right now in the EPA and in the BLMs in the United States.
Yeah,
and it's no surprise to hear Mark Bristol of Barrick CEO talking about we need to invest more in Canada, especially in states like Manitoba, progressive states that have been sort of looking for additional foreign investments. And I think, Andrew, and additional, we can talk about the PGM assays that was released.
Yes, yeah. Actually, let's jump into that, because that's apart from the nickel, the platinum group metals, that was some great results.
Andrew, the story only gets better over time, because Minago was known for its nickel content and all the drilling in the past. And what we discovered was only 20% of the historical drill holes of 86,000 meters had been asking for PGM. Maybe because some of them were drilled in the 80s before the advance of catalytics, and some of them were drilled by Victor Nickel, who's focusing on putting the mine to production because nickel was $20 a pound in 2008. So what we're doing right now is taking an additional 10% of the past drill holes. So altogether, with the previous 20%, we're getting 30% of the PGM to be assayed and modeled, and then come up with the PGM resource to be added into that feasibility study to be published. But certainly, I told my team we're not going to do another window dressing and of another updating in the feasibility study. This is the one and last.
That's it.
And
okay.
We're going to take that FS with the EAL, the license, and we're going to go to the street. And so we're asking for a little bit of patience. We set out the 2022 objective of delivering the license and the First Nations and the feasibility study. At least we sort of got one out of three out of the way. We think the EIL is gonna flow naturally, and then the FS we can definitely sort of have a better predictability in terms of how and when it lands. So we're very, very bullish going forward. Andrew.
And it goes without saying, I mean, it's one of the kind of basic things we talk about is the infrastructure is already there too. So for a company looking to maybe down the road doing an MOU or looking at you, not only they're looking at the ESG, they've got those ticked off, they're looking at the infrastructure, how much it's going to cost for them. All that will come out in feasibility studies down the road, but there's a lot there already.
Oh, we're 1 kilometer by the road.
Yeah.
I hope we're going to share some pictures with you on there. It's almost like a highway. It's some sections about the size of Trans-Canada Highway 1, and the Minago is literally like a kilometer of a fork by the highway. There's power, there's road that leads up to Sudbury Smelter, and we've engaged ESG company and done the studies that Minago is 99% greener than all the other mines in the world. So I don't think it's a question that once into production, Minago will be top 1% of all the mines in the world, because Manitoba is 99% hydro. 99% hydro.
See, that's a huge factor too. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. That's such a key factor.
Better feed into the auto batteries. It fits like a glove.
Yeah, I'm sorry I spoke over you, but I'm so glad you brought up the hydro factor. That is such a huge positive as well. And Quebec is known for being very battery friendly, but Manitoba as well has really stepped up. They do a very strong concerted effort to make themselves known as being a big EV player as well. And even though most Canadians may not hear that as much, we even see the Minister of Mines and the Liberal government even saying, we're going to make permitting maybe a little bit easier. We're kind of giving a nod to mining. Hopefully we'll see a lot more encouragement for not only like, for grants and whatnot from the Canadian government, but to the individual investor to go, listen, there's an opportunity here to make a bit of money.
It's not easy, even though with the support from Minago from the bottom up and from the top down, it's still taking weeks and months to get things done. It's just, unfortunately, that's just the way the world is right now. It's a bit paralyzed. But eventually, Andrew, the highlights of Minago is you're looking at 0.74% nickel, which is double the current head grades of all the nickel mines in North America for open pit. And there's going to be triple the grades by 2028, because the head grades for open pit nickel mines are only going to go down, not going up. And then secondly, the project permit is imminent. And then the feasibility is going to come out within the 12 months. We just raised $1 million with very strong support from our cornerstone investors in Blackstone Minerals, also from Sparta, which is an institution out of Germany. And also existing shareholder took up about 3/4 of the private placement. And we're getting additional strategic investors coming in. We just announced another $200,000 top up this morning, unsolicited. So, the company is funded towards delivering the complete assays for PGM, of which there are 2 more batches to come. The average grades for PGM is at around 0.5, and there's a very close correlation to the nickel grades. So at a current resource of 50 million tons, like you see right now over there, imagine indicated 44 plus inferred 20. So you're looking at 60 to 63 million tons at I would say the modest grade of 0.5 PGM, just back at the envelope calculation, looking at another close to 1 million ounces of PGM resources. That's another very strong indication. And this project is not in the Yukon. And, I think we're going to come on the lowest end of the CapEx amongst our peers with water and power available. And the license spells for 10,000 tons per day. This is probably 1/10 of the configuration of some of the other guys you talk to. And what that means is lower CapEx. And the reason we're able to achieve that and still produce close to 20, 30 million pounds of nickel per year based on prior historical feasibility study is because of the grade. The grade is king. The grade is king. And we have that in our back pocket. And we have a lot of also additional majors interested in exploration. We have identified a number of targets that look identical in terms of magnetic anomalies to the nose deposit, where 95% of the drilling had occurred. So right now, we're just waiting for that last bit of selling to exhaust, maybe from existing prior Elephant shareholders that received the nickel shares as dividend. But I do think that there's going to be a lot greener pastures to come. We are the team's ready to go. The team's ready to go, and now we have the First Nations as a proponent. They're calling the Manitoba province on our behalf to hurry up that permitting process, Andrew.
And that's great news. And I mean, the harsh thing with when we go into downturns like this is some shareholders have to sell because of liquidity reasons, but that brings an opportunity for someone who can look and say, yeah, I see what's developing on the horizon. And, the markets are kind of beat up right now, but it's Warren Buffett says that's the best time to buy. I mean, you don't buy when it's at the top.
It's unfortunate, right? It's unfortunate. Somebody lost is somebody else's gain. In this sector, it's all about timing. I do want to assure that we don't have any undisclosed material negative events. The project got 1 billion pounds of nickel in the ground by 0.74. We have very strong support at the local level, provincial level, and the federal level. And we're a bit late to the game also that, you see some of our peers, they were earlier stage than us, where they received some strategic investments. The reason for us is not because we are, it's not like we have, the reasons we're late to the game. We're a new story. We're just a new story. We've been here, we were probably less than 1 year old. And I think a couple of catalysts on the horizon and once they're triggered, I do believe that there's a lot of institution that's been circling around us. We'll have no choice, like the Sprott ETF on nickel, it just, I think it's a matter of time. And right now, there's not a whole lot of liquidity, but hey, at the same time, Andrew, I think at the peak of the market, liquidity is least of your concern. So if you're bullish on nickel, if you're bullish in North America, bullish in EV, you have to get in nickel because it is a de facto standards in high performance batteries for the EVs. And then you have the Hummer. Oh my God, have you seen this as a Hummer? Hummer's doing like 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, and it's going to need about 3 times as much nickel as a little Prius that's driving. And then you have the Cybertruck that's coming. The story only can get better as time goes.
Absolutely. Well, it's a real pleasure catching up with you. We're a big fan of nickel. We're a big fan of catching up with you. This project has a lot going on for it, and we're going to be real excited to watch what happens for the rest of this year because, like you said, you've hit a lot of catalysts. You haven't gotten as much love as one should, I would say, but you're going to have a lot more milestones coming up in the near future. So we're going to be watching to see you hit those.
Yeah, like Warren Buffett said, in the short term, it's a voting machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine. And the criteria for the weights are license, location, grades, access to infrastructure. So I highly encourage your audience to check us out. The symbol is FLYN, FLYN. Website is flynickel.com, and they're trading on the OTCQB, FLYNF. I resumed my Twitter activities after 6 months of hiatus because focusing on just getting this project off the ground. So you can look me up, John Lee Fly Nickel. Look forward to making more friends and hopefully have some additional shareholders on board and enjoy the ride together.
Excellent. Well, thank you, John. That was wonderful. It was great catching up with you. We'll definitely be in touch real soon.
Take care.
Take care, John.
Yep.